We do. Awesome. So I think we're here. Hi, Michael. How have you been?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Obviously not working on set.
Yeah, well, there's that. I mean, there's that. There's, this whole zombie apocalypse. Otherwise, things seem great.
Right. Absolutely. So really quick, I just wanted to go ahead and um, I don't know. Is all the audio working, guys? Can somebody check and make sure? Does it all look like? Is it all being broadcast? Me too. So they can hear me. Yeah.
Yep.
I hope so. Is all the audio working, guys? Can somebody? Okay, good. All right. So it's good. Sorry, we're broadcasting in a lot of different places, Michael. So that's why
Oh,
we're
nice.
checking. So we're actually Iowa Film, Nebraska Film, and Shelby's Feminist page
Cool.
as well. So we're in
What's that
several
called?
different places.
Tri-State Film La Femme.
Awesome.
So we're in a few different places, and we've been having we're having guests from all over the place. Last week we had Alex Holdridge, the guy who won the Cassavetes, was on last week, and he's a
Cool.
really neat guy. He made In Search of a Midnight Kiss and Meet Me in Montenegro and stuff, and it was really fun. So we were kind of thinking of people we could have on, and we wanted to have a New York person. So your name came up. We thought, oh, it'd be awesome to kind of do this, but. I knew you were teaching a little bit at Columbia. You were teaching, what was it? It was a directing actors course?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Not this semester though. They just didn't. They changed the program a bit, so they're not making the producers take the class anymore, so they have less students.
Sure.
But hopefully I'll be back there this fall. We'll see what happens. But
Oh,
actually, I'm sort of relieved because everybody's teaching online now, which teaching an acting class online sounds a little weird to me. But I suppose it's possible. Anything's possible these days.
yeah. That's excruciating. Is Tamara Jenkins teaching over there too? Do you know? Or was she teaching it?
Right now, I don't know.
Because I think she was teaching. Shelby, where was she at NYU? Do you remember?
I feel like NYU, yeah.
Yeah, she was
Oh,
teaching.
boy,
That's what I was
I don't know.
wondering.
They keep the acting department, the film acting department. Well, they don't keep it. It just is sort of separated, just because they've moved the acting classes into the theater department, just physically. So it's a little, which is, and apparently never the between the theater actors and the film actors shall meet either. So it's sort of
Right.
its own thing.
So that's cool because you didn't go to film school. You like
No, I
worked your way up.
No, I did not go to film school. In fact, I mean, I shouldn't say this, but I'm a college dropout. So I didn't even finish. Don't do that.
I'm a college dropout too, so
Oh, come on. It's
stay in school, kids.
I do regret it in some ways because I think that there are definitely a lot of positives to finishing, not just the education, but the people that you meet and that you come out with.
Yeah.
I think you come out with more of a posse in the long run
Yeah.
than not doing it. But hey, whatever it is, what it is.
Yeah, we had that talk with Alex last week because Shelby's trying to get into the film school at Austin, and we've been talking to Cindy over there. And Alex, the minute we said she was trying to get into Austin, he was like, "Yeah!" He was like, so it's kind of I think you're right though. Like the CUNY people and stuff, they all kind of come up together.
Yeah.
So they have. You're right though.
I mean, you don't have to do it, but I think it makes it easier because you're funneled into systems, often rather than sort of like going it alone. But there's positives and negatives of both, I suppose.
Absolutely. I'm not trying to convince anyone to drop out of school or anything.
But you kind of pick up your people though too. I mean, I was looking at the Plug Ugly page today quite a bit and stuff too, and you've got the folks that you work with on a really regular basis.
Yeah. Certainly, and you met a couple of them actually.
Yeah.
Mark Steele and I have been working together since we met at Tribeca Film Festival a while ago, and have been developing projects. He did some post work on one of my films, Con Artists, and has helped them.
Fantastic.
Thank you, thanks. And then Frank Kusler is sort of Frank is a guy he's another producing partner on some of my projects who I actually met on the festival circuit years ago with my first feature, I think, and he had his first feature, and then we lost contact and then bumped into each other or something. But I've gone through other partners who
He was on the conference call, right? The day we had the
yeah.
conference call?
He was with us in Nebraska as well.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
you're thinking of someone else. You're thinking of Jonathan Gray. Was on the
Oh, okay,
conference.
yeah. I'm sorry, I had it mixed up. Yeah, absolutely. What a great guy.
Yeah.
You know, and actually, Shelby and I had talked to Mark in the Twin Cities, because that was the deal. We went for coffee and had a long talk, and he said, "What is it? Is it work? Or is that what it is?"
Works, which is the hardest spelling name of a company to remember, because it's spelled differently in each time. But
Each time it's spelled differently. Yeah. So and I really like him. He's got a really awesome sense of humor. It's like really like
dry, very dry.
The driest delivery ever, but he's the funniest guy. And he's
super smart guy. Like I said,
brilliant guy.
He used to work at Tribeca. He worked at Sundance. He worked at Telluride film festivals, and we just hit it off when we worked at Tribeca together. And now he does a lot of post-production supervision, but producing is certainly, he's done a lot of producing as well, and is that's how we work together, is producing.
Because you were a coordinator at Tribeca for a period of time, right?
Yeah, a couple festivals.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I bet that was a cool experience.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I had started off in theater, and then kind of I did it backwards. I started off in theater in Southern California, and then came to New York and decided to do film. But my first job in New York was at MTV News. So the people I knew in New York were all like TV people. So I jumped out of MTV to go start my production company and make my first movie. And then I got a job at Tribeca, which is what really introduced me to the independent film world in New York, was working at Tribeca.
So I was confused. I was looking at your stuff, and which was your first movie? You've got a lot of stuff on your list, so I wasn't quite sure.
The first feature length?
Yeah.
Well, I've only made 3 feature length films. So the first one is called Devils Are Dreaming.
That's the one, and I'm not familiar with that one.
That's a narrative feature, very like no budget, run and gun, just tons of friends got together and went and banged out this crazy little movie for very little money.
Yeah. Now, The Con Artist, though, I knew that film before we met, because I'd known that. I mean, that film had a lot of traction. It did a lot of stuff.
Around. It still gets around. It's like this little movie that still gets like attention every once in a while. It's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really the personality. What is it? Is it Mark Kostabi? Kostabi.
Yeah.
What a character. I mean, and there's so many things that's like, he's telling you how to shoot it at times, it felt like.
Yeah.
It was really weird.
It's I mean, for people, I don't want to give away too much if people haven't seen it, but it's it blurs the line between documentary and fiction in a way. It's sort of I wouldn't call it a hybrid. It's why we always refer to it as a docu-comedy, because there's a lot of manipulation behind the scenes, both by the subject and from me.
It's interesting because, and if anybody hasn't seen the movie, I know we got a lot of people watching, but if anybody hasn't seen the film, it's a really cool documentary, and I don't know if you'd call him an artist or if you would call him a fence. I don't know what we'd call him, but he's this kind of character that collected other people's art and used his name to push their art and like paid them very little. It's a really strange.
Yeah.
And he was like a fixture in the New York art scene, right?
Yeah, he called himself a business artist. And his whole deal was just he became famous in the 80s, before Keith Haring became famous, before Basquiat, before all those guys.
Yeah.
And well, mostly guys. I was going to say and women, but it was really a male dominated,
Sure.
In so many ways. But he became famous for a really cynical take on the art world, which is basically that he would say that anybody can make art, and he hired other people to make the art, and then hired, then signed it and said it's mine. And now, and like, it's all bullshit. It's all, just smoke and mirrors. Like, people were buying his art, and he was going on like Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous and Oprah and all these TV shows, and he became this kind of sensation. But the art world, the A-list art world, just hated him because he was just kind of making a mockery of the industry, of the art world, which is an easily mocked world in many ways. But the movie is more about him. Well, I want to say now, but it was made a while ago. So a more contemporary version where he sort of regrets a lot of what he's done in the past to get attention.
Awesome. Good. So, what's really funny about that film is I was introduced to it. I go to coffee with kind of my art buddies, I call them. And one of my friends says, "Hey, have you seen this film, The Con Artist?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He was telling me about it. He goes, and he had this kind of anarchist kind of theme going. It's like, it's about corporatization and voyeurism and capitalism and deception and all this stuff. It's like, it was really, really cool. Yeah. So I remember seeing it and thought, oh, what an interesting thing that was, from that standpoint. But it was
a fun movie to make. It was a fun movie to make. Hard, but it was fun.
But I mean, it was selections and big fests everywhere. Because I mean, I think you were you were at Tribeca with it, and then you were also
made at Tribeca. We went to Rome. We were
Rome.
That's a bunch of different cities. Yeah.
It was really cool. So that was a really cool thing. So I wanted to talk about that, and I know you've got a bunch of films in the works, and you can talk as much or as little about what you're working on that you want. But I'm interested in Jew Boy. I haven't seen anything about it, but you're doing it with Mark Steele, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, everything I'm working on, Steele and I are partners on, basically.
Yeah. Oh, and I haven't called him yet, but I will be.
Good. Oh, he'll talk. Careful. He'll talk.
So tell me about Jew Boy. So what's this?
Jew Boy. So Jew Boy is based on a book that I got the rights to a bunch of years ago. It's a memoir that is a dark comedy, takes place in the 60s in the Bronx, about this, mostly in the 60s in the Bronx. It actually takes place in two timelines at the same time. But it's about this kid who, this kind of big, hulking, schlubby loser kid who's the son of a Holocaust survivor, who's a very disturbed woman, and kind of passes on a lot of her PTSD to him. And he gets taken under wing by this rough and tumble street football team that kind of teaches him how to kind of kick ass on the football gridiron, although it's more of a vacant lot.
Sure.
And he kind of turns into a bully in the process. And then it's a process of him realizing that he doesn't want to be a victim or a bully. So it's a lot about the victim abuser cycle, how trauma is passed down to next generations. And it's the script right now is very far along, and we're just starting to kind of hone in on actors and who we want to go after, because it's going to be an expensive movie to make, because it takes place, like I said, in the 60s in the Bronx, but also in the 90s when he's older, and going through other stuff at the same time. So
this is based on a novel. This is
based on a memoir, actually.
A memoir.
Yeah.
So how'd you find the memoir? I'm curious how you found this.
The memoir. So my father's a Holocaust survivor, and
I didn't know that.
So I'm what is referred to as second generation, and so for my entire adult life I've wanted to make something about this subject, about children of people who've gone through something like genocide and how it's passed down. And for years I was like, I want to write a story myself, or I was reading other people's stories, and I literally found a copy of this. I just saw this book on my dad's shelf, Jew Boy. I'm like, what a great title. So I picked it up, and he was like, oh, it's a terrible book. I read the first chapter and I put it down. I'm like, all right, this sounds like it might be up my alley. So, I love my dad, but we have very different tastes.
Well, sure.
And,
yeah.
I sat down and read it, and it just blew me away because it's really raw. The guy that wrote it, Alan Kaufman, is kind of this post-beat poet.
Oh, cool. I love that. Cool.
Yeah. So the book is really intense and hysterical and just bizarre and messed up. in all the right ways. So it just hit me, and I tracked down the author, and it was, this book had been out for a bunch of years until I found it, and nobody was going after it at all. And he and I just hit it off immediately, and he gave me the rights to work on it as a film.
I'd love to read it. When you've got words, boy, if you don't mind, shoot it over. I'd love to read it.
Yeah, well, I don't have a copy. I mean, it's not like online or anything, but you can certainly buy copies online. Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, you mean of the script? The script,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, I would happily.
Yeah, shoot it over, man. If you've got words, are you kidding me? If you got words, I'm going to read them. Sure. Yeah. Love you. I should probably introduce a few folks. Ben Schmidt is a producer from Iowa. He's in the upper left. Ben's working on his first feature right now.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah. And then
Casting right now.
And
Excellent.
you know Shelby. You met Shelby
Yep.
when you were here in Wayne,
Yeah.
on your trip there and everything. And Shelby's working on her thesis short right now.
Yep.
So
Cool.
she's working on that. And then Amanda Bean is actually she's really
Amanda's here.
kind of an up and comer, I guess. She's from do we call it Central Iowa or not? Cedar Rapids.
It's Central Eastern.
Yeah.
Something like that. And Amanda's got a little noir film that she just finished that's kind of starting to make the circuit a little bit. So just so you know who's in the room with you.
Yeah. Is it a feature or a short, Amanda?
It's a short film, but it could be a web series. The first one went pretty good. We entered it into LA Shorts, and we were all saying, like, if it gets in, we're all going to split an Airbnb and like have a good time, like, I hope it gets in. Positive vibes, you know?
Yeah.
But I think after producing, I was like, I don't know if I'll ever do this again. And now it's kind of settled and I feel better about it. Like that nostalgia where you're like, oh, that was actually kind of fun, So
Cool.
Heartache
we
is worth
might
the pain.
end up, maybe we'll do another one,
Yeah.
Well, and I'll come clean. I actually met Michael because we met through Lori Richards, and they were optioning a book, and I don't know if maybe I shouldn't talk about it, but you're optioning a book from Tim's book, right? Tim Schafer's book from UNL, Phantom Limbs of the Rallo Sisters, and it's a really cool. I read the script, but I read it fast because I was doing some stuff. Shelby read it and gave me notes on it. So I'm like reading her notes on your script, and I mean it's like what I mean, it's like so it was really, really cool, and that's actually how I know Mark too. So but anyway, what maybe you could just give us a little kind of your perception of that, and I know that's kind of more of a long-term thing you guys are working on, so I mean I'm just kind of
we were hoping to be making that actually this summer.
Me too.
We'll see. It's we actually just cast our lead roles,
great.
and which as of this afternoon I can actually talk about them, because we have signed agreements. Signed letters of intent is what they are. So that one, for anyone who doesn't know, it's based on a book by Timothy Schafer, who teaches at UNL, and that one fell into my lap. That book fell into my lap as well because one of my closest friends and longtime collaborators is a guy named Joe Krings, who also went to UNL, who I just know from here in Brooklyn because I have a million Nebraska friends in Brooklyn, strangely. I'm from Denver originally, so I skipped Nebraska, but somehow I met all of them here in Brooklyn. And Joe and I had been wanting to make a project back in the West where we're from, at least somewhat, and he handed me this book and said, read this, it could be good. And I fell in love with the book, Phantom Limbs of the Rallo Sisters. We tracked down Tim, same kind of story, and he was delighted to hear that we want to make a movie.
Yeah, he's excited.
And worked on the script for quite a long time, years, literally, both of these projects. And so we're looking to shoot it in hopefully in the Wayne and Hardington areas.
We're
And
excited to have you.
it's about two sisters who've been abandoned by every adult in their life since they were kids, and kind of raised each other and are hitting their early 20s and realizing that they've got to make peace with their past. And they go on separate journeys trying to find out what happened to their parents. Or their father died in mysterious circumstances, and their mom resurfaces in also mysterious circumstances. So it's one part sort of kind of call it sort of a gothic, Boondocks gothic and road movie.
Ooh.
So, and we just attached 2 actors. One of the stars of Julius Schlafer, who's one of the stars of Netflix's The Politician, and Gail Rankin, who is one of the stars of Netflix's The Glow. Glow, sorry.
Yes,
Yeah.
I know who that is.
Yeah, Gail's amazing. She kicks ass. She's if you haven't seen Alex Ross Perry's movie Her Smell.
I have seen Her Smell.
Last year, she's in that as well. And
Yeah, she's oh wow.
Yeah, she's super cool. She loves the script. Both of them love the script. Both of them are like awesome.
Okay, so this is cool now. Yeah.
Yeah, except for COVID-19 is kind of ruining everything for everybody. So we'll see when we get.
Wow. Yeah, I'm excited. And I was really lucky. You guys shot me. I don't know, it was a year ago. Maybe you guys sent me the script. I just thought it was great stuff. So I'm really excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read the script and I read the book then right after.
You did, right. Cool.
Yeah, they're great. I'm really excited about this project. I think it'll be really good.
This is nice. This is really nice for UNL too. Now, I don't know Tim personally, right?
Yeah.
But I do know that I've been told that he was excited about it. I went to his webpage today and saw that he had a thing on there that said being made into a feature film, which I thought was really cool. So
yeah, he's a really sweet guy. He's a really nice guy, really smart guy. And all he
seems
writes
like
about
it.
writes about Nebraska. That's what his thing is. He only writes novels that take place in Nebraska.
Yeah, he's got, he's a really well-known writer. I mean, if you take a look, he's got tons of literary prizes. I mean, he's really a respected author.
He's on one of his books goes on Oprah's list. He's for real. Yeah, talented guy.
Yeah, he's a legit guy. So I'm actually really kind of excited about that. This is kind of a separate side note. I noticed that you had worked with Jamaica Kincaid, who was kind of, I don't know if anybody knows who that is, but I don't know if you describe her as a novelist or like an essayist or a poet or spoken word or I mean, but
novelist,
she's cool.
She's a genius. If you have not read her books, read her books. She's like one of the best living writers.
Yeah. So how did that happen?
That's a long story. Well, I'll make it short. It's so like I said, I'm from Denver. I lived in LA for a long time. And then left LA with an experimental theater company and landed in Bennington, Vermont, weirdly. And needed a job really badly in Bennington, Vermont. And it just ended up, there was this woman who needed an assistant, and I'd heard her name, but never read anything, and literally just went and interviewed to be her assistant, and loved her from the second I met her, and then read her books and was like, holy shit, this woman is like beyond, she's like, if you want to read a writer who is like a wordsmith and is just poetic, she's the best, man. She's brilliant. And, so I ended up working as her assistant, but then kind of became part of the family for a long time, became very close with her and her husband, Alan Shawn, who's a composer, who's Wallace Shawn's brother. And their kids are awesome. They're all adults now.
Right.
But
that's actually really cool.
I worked for a while.
I didn't get to see it, but I knew you had done something for the 150th anniversary of BAM.
Yeah.
Right. And it's difficult to find a place to watch it. I was trying to find how to watch it. So I wanted to come all prepped and ready and like, I watched it and everything.
It should be on Canopy, but we've been trying to get our distributor to wake up and put it on Canopy. But
we can't get Canopy.
I'll send you guys a link. I'll send you a link.
Okay. Because we can't get Canopy here.
Oh, you can't.
It's
expensive.
It's expensive, and the college is like, okay, we don't have a big enough film program to warrant Canopy, and
Yeah. No, I'll send you guys a link. I mean, it's available, but it's our distributor is like, it's a few years old, and he's kind of let it lapse.
Yeah.
But it's a good film. I mean, it was a commission. If you guys don't know what BAM is, it's the oldest performing arts center in the country. It was opened during the Civil War. And it has been like the home for experimental everything since pretty much the Civil War. Like anybody that did live performance and film, frankly, from Europe, from Asia, from Africa, from all over the place, went through BAM. And their stories, the story of the institution is like, we treated it like it was kind of the story of the rise and fall and rise again of a hero, actually. So it's cool. A lot about the movie's about the institution, but it's really about a lot about New York, and it's about performance in the United States. So yeah, covers a lot of ground.
So I'm curious, that project, was that funded by the Institute then, or was did the funds come from outside?
Financed by private equity.
Okay.
Yeah, private
people
equity.
Who loved it and just wanted to see that.
Yeah, they put money in, and I mean, they gave me a lot of leeway to do what I wanted.
Right.
Which was cool.
It looked really cool. I mean, I again, I wish I would have had a chance to be able to watch it before we got together to kind of talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, I'll send you a link. You can feel free to share it. They don't.
Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great. Because I always have students. And I'm always like, hey, you got to see this thing. My friend made it.
Yeah.
It's always like, how that goes.
Yeah.
When you have kind of things that are talking about. So, I went through your stuff and I kind of looked, and it said you have some producer credits, you have some director credits, you have some writer credits.
Mm-hmm.
But you started out as an actor. I mean, do you really think of yourself more as an actor? Or do you really think of yourself more as a writer or a director? Well,
I haven't pursued acting in a gajillion years, not seriously. Mm-hmm. So I'm a filmmaker. I mean, I grew up acting and studied acting in college, and I love actors. I love working with actors. I would love acting if I didn't, if it didn't involve auditioning and acting. The acting life is hard, man. It's a hard life. Which is why filmmaking is a hard life, but at least there's some level of like, at least you think you're in control when you're a filmmaker.
Right.
Whereas when you're an actor, there's just no kidding yourself, like you just are not in control. Yeah. So, I'll say this, I'll always have like the soul of an actor, I guess. And if somebody said, hey, here's a role, go do it, I would probably say, sure, great, sounds good to me. And I'd go do it, but I'm not gonna it's just brutal. Like how many times you walk into a room and you're like, what am I even doing here? They're all, I clearly don't want to, I'm clearly not the right guy for this. What,
right.
A lot of that. It's rough.
So I'm kind of interested in your opinion of Brian Begley, who's a theater professor here at the college. He's done a lot of stuff and everything. And he one of the things is we were developing the film, we did a film minor recently, and we kind of developed it. One of the things we talked about was he really felt like all film writers, producers, directors need to take an acting class, because he said, unless you've acted, it's impossible for a director to know really how to direct actors well.
Totally agree. Yeah. I totally agree. I mean, I was just having this discussion with a producer who has done a lot of stuff, and she was asking me, she just read Jew Boy and she loves it and wants to help us get it made.
Yeah.
And was asking me about my comfort level with like young actors. And, I'm comfortable with any actors, even non-actors, working with them. But the reason she asks me, and I think this is, and I say this all the time, that in film, a lot of directors have no freaking clue what to do with actors. A lot of directors are so stuck with they're so into the look and the equipment and all, the accoutrements of the filmmaking, that they don't know what the hell to do with actors. And one of the reasons we teach the class at Columbia, these directors and producers are required to take at least the first year, and they're forced to act. That's what part of what the class is. The first half of the class is them getting up and doing scene study, and then directing actors later on. And it's imperative, because they just most young directors and producers and even DPs, they don't know what to say half of the time. because they haven't studied it at all and haven't, seen what it's like to be on the spot. And I always say, like, the acting and making and filmmaking are just so completely different. What everybody gets to do on a set, what actors do compared to everybody else, is like a whole other world. It's like a miracle anything is good ever. Like what, with all these people staring at you in lights, and cameras and moving this and that, and people hanging out in back, worrying about when lunch is and when they're breaking, the fact that like people are supposed to kind of emote some level of like truthful emotion is like, it's crazy. I mean, theater, it makes more sense because in theater, you only have an audience staring at you at a certain point, but most of the time you're rehearsing, and it's very focused and insular, and you're going from the beginning to the end of the piece, not chopped up and like here and there. So it's just so different that, I do think that everybody should be taking acting classes.
That's something I think too. And of course, most of the folks, are ultra low budget, micro budget, whatever the term we use for films that cost very little money. Getting that bridge to get actors that, okay, I've done stage for a really long time and now I'm in front of the camera, trying to get them in that comfortable place is tough. I mean, I think
stage actors are very different, can be very different from film actors too. Although I would say, and this goes against what most of my filmmaking friends would say, I'd take a stage actor over a trained film actor any day. Mainly because for me, I find working with somebody who's up here and bringing them down.
Oh, I see.
Easier than somebody who's
holding them up
here and trying to get them to go up here sometimes. Like getting an actor who I want, who's trained to be like, really like mumbly, like, really minute things for film, which is important. Getting them to be big can be like trying to just herd cats. It's so hard sometimes because it goes against everything they've been told throughout their entire career, if they have a career, whatever. And stage actors are just like, character actors, at least they should be able to take direction and work, down.
I think too, and we've had this discussion about actors too, and for me, I almost would rather take somebody who's a little less talented that takes direction really well than somebody who's really talented who doesn't take direction really well.
I'd rather have both.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, the reality, I mean, they always say it's a cliche, but it's true that the casting is 50, 60, 70% of the film.
Yeah.
The right people. Because you can have you can have a shitty looking movie, terrible looking movie. As long as the sound is good and the acting is good and the writing is good, you can be okay.
You got it. Well, and I think from the standpoint of resourcing, I mean, I think that's really where the New York and LA really help, because you've got the big pools of pro actors to draw from. You have a casting call, you'll get a lot of folks, at least you hope you do. I mean, that's kind of the thing, from the standpoint of resource, So these films, the films that you guys are doing, you're independently funding these things. So
well, yes and no, it depends. I mean, like Phantom Limbs, we have one investor right now who, if we may do it low budget, like in other words, below $1 million, with that person and maybe one other investor. But we are pitching that to Netflix and Amazon and to the streamers, and with the hope that we can get more money and more bells and whistles, especially now because of how things are panning out with COVID. It's going to cost all films more money to get made to be able to, until there's an actual, shot we can all take to make us, to inoculate us. Things are going to be weird and cost more money.
Yeah. I suppose there'll be a big batch of union rules if there isn't already, I suppose.
Yeah, they're working on them. They're working on them for sure. And there's every day there's a new article or some suggestion list, as I'm sure you guys are reading too. It's pretty crazy.
The thing was, and I talked to Tamara about Private Life quite a bit, and when we talked, she was talking about how different it was to raise the money for that film than it was The Slums of Beverly Hills, because one of the things she had talked about was that she went to a Netflix and said, okay, I've got a, and I suppose if you're her, I mean, you can go and say, okay, I'm Tamara Jenkins, I got a script, make
Sure.
a movie. But I mean, I think and you please correct me if I'm wrong, before, where you had more the marketplace of festival, you go to festival and then you have the marketplace of, okay, we've done good and people have seen it, maybe people want to buy it. Her thing was to go there, and they provided funds up front for the production of that, which was a little bit different game. So I don't know do you think it's changed that much in the past 10 years? I mean, from that standpoint, from the streaming provider funding versus the marketplace, or not?
I think the more things change, the more they stay the same. I think that there was probably a sweet spot for a while where the streamers were something new, but now they're basically studios.
Yeah.
So you're either, able to get a studio interested, but or not, and then you've got to go out and find either grant money or, private equity. Lord knows our government doesn't give us any money to do these things in this country. So
Yeah,
that's
National Endowment for the Arts isn't what it used to be.
and I mean, and then you have like things like incentives, like, tax incentives that can help. So, on independent, when we talk about real independence, you're talking usually about a combination of equity financing, tax incentives, and maybe some grant money,
Yeah.
And that's still the same. It's always been that way for years. And usually the big dividing line with the bigger streamers and the studios is that the streamers and the studios, they either want something that can travel overseas that everybody and their mother is going to want to watch, or they want something that is just usually going to be straight down the line, big movie stars, and plot driven, that's really going to, hit a certain kind of marketplace, a broad marketplace. So if you're making something that's really weird and structured really strange, and you're not like, Darren Aronofsky or, Tamara Jenkins to some degree, although Tamara doesn't have the power that Darren Aronofsky has.
No, not.
But it's if you're making a really weird movie, you may not find financing at Netflix and Amazon, so you may not have that kind of freedom to make the thing that's innovative and artistically what you want to make. So, but it's the same. It's always been like that. Well, not always. It's been like that for a long time.
Yeah, the retention of final cut is always the.
Yeah, and there's that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although Netflix has a reputation, and hope they stay this way, of really kind of caring about the filmmakers and giving them their money and saying, we like your movie, we like you as people, we like your group, we like your plan.
We trust you.
We'll make the movie and then come back with it. And they've been successful because people like to work with them. Other studios are not as laissez-faire.
Yeah. It's that, I don't know, in my mind it's sometimes that if it's going to be shown in cinemas, that final cut seems like it's so much more of a big studio thing.
Yeah,
Unless,
I mean, and cinemas are a whole other, these days, very few small movies actually get released in the movies, in the theaters. After this whole insanity is done, we're going to see a different shift. So
it's going to be weird.
It's going to be weird, yeah. And it's going to be weird for sure. It's going to be, but in some ways it's going to be, there's always, with all these, not that I'm like that old, but like, people have lived through weird, crazy upheavals, and there's always some new thing that comes out of these things that makes it more interesting, better, just different. Like for instance, I don't know if you guys saw this movie Swallow that was just released. It's kind of a psychological horror movie. I
know of the film. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so it's out on VOD now. It's a good film. And like Eliza Hittman's film was just released. Like all these movies that were supposed to be in the theaters right now. Yeah. Some of them had to go straight to VOD, but with Swallow and a few others, IFC Films actually did a theatrical run in a a drive-in theater in I forget
Yeah.
where, in Hannah or something.
Well, and that's
like, wow, maybe drive-in theaters will come back. Who would have thought of that? That could be kind of cool.
well, and I
That'd be
think
cool. Good with it.
especially for the Oscar type stuff, I can't remember what the rule is. There's a rule that you have to screen in so many theaters.
You have
They have to be approved theaters too. Yeah.
Yeah, it has
They
to
have
be
to
like
be
specific theaters in whatever county Los Angeles is in.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? But they have
It's something, yeah.
that's where that
For like a certain amount of days.
That's what that expression is, screening in empty theaters everywhere, because it's the thing like, okay, it's on Netflix, but we're going to screen in empty
And that's going to
theaters.
change after this too. I mean, it's had to change for a while. I mean, even SAG had deals where you had to premiere your low budget movie in a movie theater, and it's with Netflix and everybody, they're just who's going movies. People don't go to movie theaters unless it's for Black Panther.
Except
Yeah.
weirdos like us.
And
Or
then,
if they're like film nerds who
the cinephiles. Yeah.
would
Yeah,
kill to
but
go
like-
see everything in a movie theater. Yeah.
Like, I don't go
Theater
to
was bumping here.
I don't go to like an AMC because I don't like those theaters. Like, I don't really
They had
care
this-
about the megaplexes. I want to go to just a really nice theater.
Mm-hmm.
They had the Dream Loungers here, so I mean everybody was going. Yeah,
Oh,
They're
yeah.
they're
I
like
think-
basically reclining movie theater chairs. Yeah, dude,
Yeah.
everybody was like,
but
"Oh,
like
are you going to
Applebee's
Galaxy?"
service.
They
Yeah.
have the Dream Loungers. Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
big thing.
Like Alamo Draft House, right? Alamo
Alamo
Draft
Draft
House and the Applebee's and the
Yeah, no, and that's good because they had to reinvent it because nobody was going.
Yep.
So you've got,
Yeah.
it's basically, I think it's like cinephiles and like old Jews. So, movie theaters. It's true. I mean, people listen, Jew Boy. People have had people that have come to me Jew Boy just because of the title, because the Jewish Film Festival route apparently is like hopping all the time because old Jews like to go to movie theaters.
Yeah. Well,
There you
people
go.
got to go out, so the but that's kind of, I'm really thankful though for the art house theaters. I get a little bit of static, and I know like on Iowa Film that people are like, Mike, he's the arty guy, he's the film art guy, and
That's why we love you, though.
yeah, and he's, so he's going to bring up some French director nobody's ever heard of. But I mean,
good.
those small theaters, and we're seeing, of course, the big restorations of those theaters. I think it's good for especially films like Phantom Limb or Jew Boy to have these small theaters to screen in for those audiences that want to go out and see them.
They're huge. I mean, those are, that's what I want to go to. That's what most of my friends want to go to.
Yeah.
But
in all
it's
Omaha, we have those.
very hard to compete, and it's hard to keep those brick and mortar places open.
Mhm.
You know?
Well, I mean, they're all endowment here. When in Wayne, of course, we have the Restored Theater here. The Majestic runs on an endowment. In Omaha, they have the Ruth Sokoloff Theater on an endowment. The Dundee Theater is really involved. Alexander Payne was really behind a lot of the fundraising for the restoration of the Dundee. And the Dundee's in a very cool neighborhood, the Dundee neighborhood, but near
and is
Blacksmith.
that's different than film streams, though, right?
Actually, they're related. Film Streams is actually the Ruth Sokoloff Theater and the Dundee, and they show small budget films, indies, foreigns, documentaries, the very quality stuff that you're not going to get at the Cineplex screens there.
I think the real key for places like that is to occasionally, if you have more than one screen, book Wonder Woman in one screen, and the rest of the screens make them art films. So you make your money.
Yeah. So they make they're not. Yeah. So I mean that's.
I have a lot of cineast friends that are very like, they won't go see those movies. They're so like, I'm not seeing Black Panther. I'm like, well, whatever. It's film. I try to see everything if I can.
Yeah.
Like I don't have a attitude about like seeing. I mean, there's some Hollywood movies I'm definitely not going to see. I'm not really a superhero fan, but I'll check out every once in a while.
Yeah.
But
I think it's kind of easy to get into a trap though too. I get film textbooks, and I've got there's a retired film professor here who taught film theory, Bob Zeinheiser, who's a brain, and he's always talking to me about Polakowski or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I get kind of immersed in that, and then somebody will say, "Well, what happened? You didn't see Endgame?" I'm like, "No, I was busy watching other stuff." And it's easy to, I think, become a film snob if
That's
I mean,
all right.
it's easy to get sucked into the rabbit hole
Yeah,
of that,
it's okay.
But
But there's everybody else is sucked into the end game rabbit hole, so we're all in the rabbit hole.
But I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, you can learn a lot of great stuff from that. And of course, like I agree with you, Michael, that watching all of that stuff, I think, is really the best way to learn.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to a degree, there is a point where I just don't care anymore about like the next like fight scene.
Yeah, 15-minute fight scenes or the terrible dialogue gets me. I mean, the Marvel movies. I mean, as a spectacle, they're fantastic, and if I'm teaching a class on animation, they're wonderful. But some of the dialogue, I just have to like bite my lip through.
Yeah, I mean, I say that having like I just like spent the last few days watching The Mandalorian all the way through because I'm a Star Wars nerd, and
You're the right age.
Like I clearly was like, this is not like health food. This is junk food, and that's cool.
It's good to eat junk food though.
Whatever.
As in film criticism, I actually have I can never met Jim Gaffigan, the comedian, does a really funny skit about McDonald's, and it's like it's bad for you, but it's so good going down. So I always kind of refer to films like this, like, well, that's McDonald's,
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, So
Every once in a while, not all the time, not every night.
Yeah,
So I watched CBGB the other day, and they had the film CBGB, which I love so much. And they had a thing when they interviewed Lou Reed, and they said, "Well, what do you like?" And he comes back and he says, "Who gives a shit what I like?" You know what I mean? But I'm going to give you the Lou Reed question about what's the stuff that you really like the most to watch. And I'm going to get you on both sides. I'm going to say narrative-wise, what's the stuff that you like, and then maybe documentaries. What really
Like actual films?
Yeah.
Like
What's the
newer
stuff
or
you
older,
really
or
love?
like
Directors or films that you think are fantastic?
that's tough. There's so much.
It's like asking which child you love the most.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Like every time, like you're like, come up with your top 10, whatever, and I'm always like, oh, top
That's
10.
like from High Fidelity. Your top 5 favorite.
Yeah, no, it's tough. I mean, I'm the obvious ones, Cassavetes, the obvious, but also going further back, I'm a big like Fritz Lang and Buster.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
But
you should be teaching
also
film criticism.
I love the Russians. I love Tarkovsky.
Yeah.
I could watch Tarkovsky like constantly. I love Tarkovsky. Bergman,
Yeah.
but also, what's his name? Jeez, Young Frankenstein.
Mel
Brooks.
Yeah, Mel Brooks.
Mel Brooks. I kept thinking Albert Brooks, but I like Albert Brooks too. Mel Brooks. I love Mel Brooks. I mean, he's a genius. So stuff like that. But in the documentary world, the Maisel brothers and I like that sort of fly on the wall stuff too.
Sure.
Yeah.
But also like Orson Welles' film F for Fake. If you haven't seen that,
I've never seen that.
That was a big influence for con artists.
What's it called?
Great F for Fake.
Was that his last movie that was released in his lifetime?
No. The last film was they didn't have the money to finish editing.
Well,
it.
that one just came out.
That's a different film. That's oh God, what's it called?
It's good though.
Really
It's
good.
the one that's on
Pretty cool.
Netflix.
It's good, and it's sad that it wasn't made in
Yeah.
his lifetime. I saw it. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, there's a really good documentary about it too. I'm trying to think of it. The posters in my head, but I can't remember the name.
Yeah,
But no,
I
F
can't
for
either.
Fake is a great documentary. It's about fakery in filmmaking and in everything. Big influence on con artists. And Fast, Cheap, and Out of Control. It's a great documentary. Errol Morris, all of Errol Morris's stuff, I love. So I don't know. I could go on and on. I mean, there's so many. Spike Lee's genius. Well, not everything, but a lot.
I actually studied a lot of Spike Lee when I was an undergrad because Maureen Carrick, who was my film professor, had gone to CUNY in New
Uh-huh.
York and was really kind of on the ground floor, you know, like She's Gotta Have It and all of those things. And she was really, really influenced by that.
Yeah.
Although it's not my taste, I love the New York filmmakers. I mean, I really do. Like, you know, I know it's cliche to love Noah Baumbach, but I love Noah Baumbach.
Yeah, no, he's
It's only because he's really good.
yeah, he's a smart writer. I mean, his last movie was
Oh,
great.
fantastic. You know, I watch that stuff and I think, my God, I could make films for 100 years and never do anything like this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's so smart and so real and so clever. And I just, you know, I love that. And it's got that, all of it has that New York flavor to it every time.
I love Kelly Reichardt's stuff.
Oh, really?
Oh, she's
Anything specific?
Meek's Cutoff.
Okay. She just had. Did you just see her new film? Was it called First Cow?
First Cow now, because they released it like right as
it, yeah.
thing is happening.
Yeah.
I don't think I keep looking it up to see if it's on.
Yeah.
It's available.
I saw the stuff for that. Didn't see a release. So.
Wendy and Lucy's great.
Oh my, yeah, but I can't deal. Wendy and Lucy, man, I can't deal. I have to pause it in the middle because it's
intense. No, I love her films. I love their kind of spare slowness.
Yeah, Michelle Williams, man, crazy. I mean, if you could cast anybody in anything, my God, that woman's so friggin' talented.
Yeah, she's amazing.
I mean, what is it? Manchester by the Sea, that scene where she cries and oh my God, she should have won the Oscar for that. I lose it every time I watch it. It's just crazy good.
Yeah.
So I love it. So that's good. Well, you know, I've been talking nonstop, so you know we don't want to take a lot of Michael's time, but you know, for the folks that are actually in the stream, you have any questions or anything, or did I cover it all?
I guess my question, if it's open to the room, so we here are extremely indie. Like, if you think of underground, then just think even more underground than that.
Under the underground?
Okay. So, yeah. So one thing I'm finding, like, we did a premiere here and Ben was there for the Wild Card, which is a short film. Mm-hmm. One of our friends is a guy named Robbie Heath, and he's doing a film for the Iowa Hawkeyes and stuff like that. And he got like a theater room from Film Scene, which is in Iowa City, which who knows now though with COVID-19, who knows?
That's a great art house theater in Iowa City. Sorry, I just want to plug that.
No, you're good. And he was saying how, well, basically it was like $50 a ticket, I believe, and the tickets sold out. And then they had like a drink room, like with basically just like Hy-Vee drinks and which is a local grocery store and stuff like that. Yeah, good old Hy-Vee. But he was able to probably fund for his film like $5,000 in one night. Uh-huh. And I mean, I think everybody in this room has like dreams, right? That's why we're all here. And yeah. And Ben's got his big script coming up and working on Mike's project now. And Shelby always has doing something, always.
I know, but if my movie ever gets done, I mean, I'm 50% through principal.
Hey, you're closer than I am.
My question was just, how would you go about that, especially like if you don't have big names backing you? I mean, do you just advertise more like, hey, there's going to be a party? Or were you saying kind of like, oh, it's going to be a party, we're going to watch this and this, but then in between that is, you know, Wonder Woman or whatever. Do you have to pay rights to that stuff? You mean
as a fundraiser?
Yeah, like what would you think would be the best way it would, I mean, because I did write down, you said grant, let's see here, equity financing, tax deductions, and grants. Mm-hmm. So I'm just curious, like, if there's another way that you, I mean, I know a lot of people like get a Kickstarter, and I don't even feel like I get that much support on likes and stuff, you know what I mean? Except for like some people, I mean, it just depends, I guess. I don't know, just curious on that.
I mean, Kickstarter can be good. It can be good for a certain amount of money. you just have to know like what your limit is
Mhm.
in terms of what you can really kind of hassle everybody to give you. And I've done, I did a short a few years ago that we raised some money on, not on Kickstarter, but something like that.
Seed and Spark or something.
Yeah, exactly. Seed and Spark. And you quickly find that it's a hell of a lot of work because you got to make a video, you got to make all kinds of gifts to give people, and you have to literally hassle everybody like every day with emails, and it's sort of a little beggy, but
Yeah.
all right. But the real trick with Kickstarter and any of those is you got to make it's there's sort of an auction-y feel. Like there has to be like this, you have to play this game of like there's a risk of like it's not going to happen, we really need you to give, we need you to give again because we're so close. And then you have to have somebody who's like waiting in the wings to drop $1,000 at once to make it go over and work for you. That's the best way of doing it, is that if you already have some money that is a chunk of change, whether it's mom and dad or your dentist or whoever, I don't know, and they can come in the long run after you've raised bits and pieces and plop down a big chunk of money to make the whole thing successful. Right. It's a lot of work, but whatever, it can be worth it. Depends on how much you want to raise. We've done, like, for my first movie that we were talking about earlier, Devils Are Dreaming, we did do a fundraiser for that, like kind of, at the time I was managing a couple punk bands in New York, so we booked a couple punk bands at a bar that we got for free, and I don't remember what the deal was that we had. Like, we charged something at the door, and we made some money. It didn't finance our entire movie. I think a big part of fundraisers is that you do it, make sure you don't spend a lot of money on it, and hopefully no money on the actual fundraiser, because you're invariably going to make less than you hope you're going to make at the fundraiser, unless a lot of really wealthy people who can just plop down a bunch of money. The best thing to do is to know wealthy people.
But I think we would, and I know because I've been involved with you guys a little bit, I know you guys kind of, now that you've done it, kind of have a way that it's like, okay, what are the different, you have a strategy of, okay, what are the different ways we can try to find money for our films? And you guys are good at that. I feel like, because when we talked about Phantom Limb, and, I feel like you guys were pretty open with me about it, and about, this is where we're at, this is where we think we can be, we think we can find the funding, and this and that and this. I think as a filmmaker, I think we need to kind of look at fundraising is as much of a skill as the writing or the cinematography or anything else.
It is a skill, and teaming up with people who are good at it, who A, are good at asking people for money, and B, know people who to ask. Because it really is. I was raised in a very middle class family. I don't run with rich kids at all. I don't know rich people. If I do, it's in passing, not people that I can really. So, but you pitch people and you ask, and you never know. And of course, there's the other side of, like, there are grants out there still. I don't know where they're going to be in 6 months or a year from now, but there are film grants here and there. They're very competitive. They usually have like a kind of a socio-political bent to them. They're usually trying to support a certain underrepresented group, which is fine. It's partially what they exist for. And then, in tax incentives, unfortunately, where you guys live, they're non-existent.
As Michael found out when coming to Nebraska.
Yeah, we knew before, but we'd heard about some small things that really don't exist either. Lori's trying very hard, but they kind of don't exist. And after this time, they will not exist. They will probably never exist. And if they do, it'll be years down the road after what's going on in everybody's governments right now. Even New York cut the tax incentives a bit here.
Right. But
that said, it sounds really bleak in many ways. But the reality is, like, since the beginning, people, the good news is that everybody has cameras, everybody has this, which, obviously you don't necessarily want to use this, but just, make things. What do you really have to spend money on? If you're not hiring union actors, which at this rate you probably shouldn't.
Well, not right, and not here because the union's kind of non-existent here.
It's non-existent.
Yeah.
So I mean, really, what you have to worry about is feeding people, which is always an expense. But you can do that cheaply. You can do that smart, and rentals here and there, and maybe insurance is probably smart. So keeping the costs low and the run and gun of it low. And again, like I said earlier, like if the script's good, if the acting's good, and it sounds good, nothing else really matters. It's good to have it look good, but with what we can all have access to now, like it's gonna look good probably, unless you really just blow it. Which is okay too, because I mean, when you're just starting out, that's part of the deal. Like, it's okay to like make something that doesn't like get into Sundance. It's like, it's so competitive out there. So much stuff being made that, but on the other hand, if you want to make it your career to make money, you work on stuff, make things, and then move on to what's bigger and better and next,
Cedar Rapids is a cool place. They actually have a lot of production, and Cedar Rapids, Iowa, has a lot of production all the time. There is literally a shoot, maybe 2 every weekend going on in this small community of filmmakers. It's really unusual. I mean, as far as we say, like micro budget, like under $50,000 projects being made, there's so much more of that, I would say, just in that part of the state of Iowa than probably all of Nebraska. I know the Nebraska folks probably get mad.
And I mean, I don't know if it depends on what kind of films you guys are into and want to make. There are certain genres that like will always have an audience. People I've had friends that have made super low budget horror movies that end up going from one festival to the next, to the next, to the next, getting a distribution deal, making money in the long run, just because there's this like super dedicated audience out there for certain kinds of horror movies, but there's other genres as well that, have dedicated audiences that if you just make something that's good and smart and interesting, you can find it. But, finding the money is always a mystery to everybody, even people that have made movies a million times. Every time it's like starting a new business. It's like a new startup every single time. And you always look around and go, okay, well, where are we getting the money for this? I don't know. Okay, well, let's just start asking people,
It's funny, that last Scorsese movie said he'd been looking for the money to do that for 10 years. And
I don't doubt it. Yeah, expensive movie.
So, like, wow, you're looking for money?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and unfortunately, Scorsese doesn't always bring in the money. I mean, his movie before that, Silence, I'm pretty sure was a bomb.
Right.
It has nothing to do with the quality of the movie, but it is kind of sad that this filmmaker who's well respected and well loved doesn't put butts in seats.
Yeah, so there are filmmakers that are hated that still get money.
Yeah, it is. Woody Allen's still making movies, and boy, I'll tell you what, every time that guy releases anything, people are mad.
I don't know who finances them. It's all overseas money. Yeah.
Well, he still has.
He's making them, and people are watching them, and they get distribution. And
yeah, I guess I don't know. I haven't seen one in a long time.
They had that big deal with Amazon, and then Amazon pulled out after.
Right. Yeah.
That's good. Well, guys, I don't want to keep Michael too much longer. So unless anybody's got a last minute question,
I did, yeah. Something I kind of wanted to ask, kind of piggybacking on sort of what we were talking about earlier about like financing and all that. Something I'm thinking about a lot right now. Because my first feature, I'm going to fund it all myself. I'm going to shoot it myself. That's the way I've wanted to do it for a while. I'm thinking now, what's going to be the best way to get as many eyeballs on it as possible? I'm not necessarily saying making money off of it, because even though it's going to have hardly any budget, I know it's a micro budget feature with no names in it from the middle of nowhere. My thing now is when it's done, I just want it to be seen by as many people as possible.
Well, I mean, I would say the first thing I would say is to be smart about it. Put a ton of work into it, right? So don't just think about it. My advice is don't just think about it as how many eyeballs can I get on it? think about it like you're paying for it yourself. You've put time and equity into it, and sweat and love and tears and all that stuff. Understand the festival routes, like really look at them. Yeah, I don't know if Chris Gore has done this in a million years, but Chris Gore used to have a great book called like the Ultimate Film Festival Guide or something. And I don't know if he's ever published one again.
Yeah, I remember.
But there is a level where like if you before you go putting your film online or just getting eyeballs and having premieres and showing it here and there, try to go for the top festivals. Literally try to submit to, because there are A-list festivals, there are B-list festivals, there are C and D-list festivals. And understanding what that world is super important. Like my first movie, we did not understand that world at all. We just wanted to get the movie out and get our friends to see it and get everybody to see it. And we were like, let's go. Because that's how we made the movie. It was just like, let's just do it. I didn't have a DP the week before we started shooting.
It's all hustle. It's all hustle.
Yeah. But at the point where it's done, you have to take a breath and say, okay, hold on for a second. This is where it gets interesting. Well, it gets dicey because, you've got 5 A-list festivals that are super hard to get into. Sundance,
the Big 5,
Toronto, Cannes,
South by
Germany, Berlin, not South by. South by is second tier. So
okay, really, South by is considered second tier.
Yeah, absolutely, because
he's talking about the Big 5, the big cream.
Sundance, Cannes, Berlin, Toronto. These are markets. These are real markets. These are where the creme de la creme, supposedly, of independent film go to find their audience, to get their buzz, to find distribution at those markets. And if you come out of those festivals, and they only take premieres, those festivals.
Yeah.
If you come out of those festivals just having premiered there, other festivals will take the film, first of all. They will book the film, and you'll be playing more festivals, most likely. And you may come out with a distribution deal. The second tier festivals, and granted, South by and Tribeca and these other festivals would probably argue with me about them being second tier, but they're second tier. We all know they're second tier. Tribeca, South by, other festivals that are on that level don't get me wrong, they're great to premiere at. And you may have the same thing. You may go to a ton of festivals after that. You may get a distribution deal. That's, my last 2 feature-length films, we premiered at Tribeca, and we came out of both of those festivals with distribution and with a ton of other festivals. Great. And then you get your kind of cool regional festivals, cool specific types of Cucaloris and San Francisco Film Festival, although they may be second tier. So real indie film festivals that you're gonna love to be at because it's just fun and it's not as much pressure, not business oriented. And then you've got then you have your level of festivals that are just there to kind of pump up local businesses and make local rich people feel good because they get to, which are weird.
That's how my friend Morgan sold her film. She had a film. It got into, I think it was Toronto, and then they made a deal. I mean, at the festival, she got there, and somebody had been at her screening, came back, said, "Boy, we're really interested in your film."
Yeah.
And then they went back. Business cards were exchanged and went back and forth, and she sold her film.
So I would say, understand the festival route, understand it, submit to them, understand that it is, it's time constraining because it's not always, the Sundance is in, January, and they're going to start looking at films, and usually you have to kind of know somebody, and it helps because half of the films are already programmed already. Yeah. So chances are you won't get in, but try, and just whoever try to hustle them. Who's that? And
sorry, this is Charlie.
Charlie's trying to break in.
He's a mama's boy.
Great.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't he so cute?
And also, I mean, I know this isn't film wise, but I just did a panel the other day where some producers were talking about how they were hoping that web series kind of come back.
Yeah.
That, things that led to Broad City and led to High Maintenance and stuff like that. That because they're smaller and more focused, and they don't require a giant crew and a giant cast and a ton of money to make, which is a problem right now.
Yeah.
If you make something that you can just get up and web series is a different thing. Just get them up on the internet and have people watch and watch and watch and watch. And if it catches fire, great. But if you're talking about a feature or something like that, that's a different story.
Yeah. I think, Ben, if you have a chance, there's a Steven Sapalis, he's a New York guy. He and his drunk friends made We Need Girlfriends every weekend for a couple of months. They ended up getting a pilot for CBS. Mm-hmm. And it was just a bunch of drunk guys who worked on this every weekend, who put together, and it's very, very funny. Mm-hmm. And it got to the point where it got so much traction that they were able to do that. And, at the time it was a better time, but I'm kind of almost thinking coming off of COVID like this, there may be a lot of marketability in some of those areas now.
Yeah, it might get noticed. It might get, it ain't easy either way, but yeah. I just think knowing the terrain that you're going into when it comes to distribution is just super important.
Yeah.
Would you have any resources that I could, because my knowledge of festival stuff is submit on Film Freeway and write them a letter and do a little bit of research on the festival.
Yeah, it's tough. I would say, again, one of the ways of doing it is if somebody either at the festival has a connection to the festival, they can watch your film and say, yes, I love it. Yes, I will write a letter for you, or give a call and say, watch this, and I'm not saying that you have to start at the top, just know what the top is and understand what you're submitting to, because it's just important to know that. Because if your design is to make your money back and to, whatever, it's hard. And you got to know what that means and how to do it.
Awesome. This has been super fun.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
Michael, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're busy. You got a couple of movies you're working on. You're trying to get some stuff put together and everything and stuff. We can't wait to see you back in Nebraska.
I hope to be there. We were hoping to be there this summer, but we'll see. Maybe
I know. I was getting everybody lined up and ready to go. And it's like, well, I guess this ain't gonna happen for a while.
Well, we'll see. We're still figuring out if we can sneak in there some way. Maybe we'll
that'd be great.
Quietly.
That'd be great. And please, if you've got pages, boy, I'd sure love to see them. So send me anything you're writing. I'd just love to look at it. And
I'll send you Jew Boy. And what was I love it. Oh, I'm sending you a link to the BAM film. Sure.
I'd love it. And then I'll read everything and stuff too. And
feel free to share with the cohort here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'll be happy to do that and stuff too. And I'll cover it with lots of red marks and stuff.
Okay.
Read it through. So great. Well, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end the conversation. And thanks again, Michael. It was wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Nice meeting
you guys.
Best of luck. Stay healthy.
Oh, for sure. You too.
Doing my best.
Yeah.